Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first of our video series. We are going to be giving you information on the Victoria Falls World Challenge Pigeon Race over the next 3 or so months as we build up into our race season and towards the start of the Super Race in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe. So I'm sitting here with Geoff Armand, our race director, and I'm Richard Huddy. And we are going to be once again talking about the racing season and the race that's happening this year in 2022.
Thanks for joining us, and thank you, Richard, for the interview.
So we're going to focus today on the incoming birds, where they've come from, how our quarantine has happened, our mortalities. Geoff, let's start with what were the intakes for the season? Where did the birds come from, and what are you seeing in terms of trends from the various regions?
Okay, first of all, I must say that we had a really good intake. A total of 9,108 pigeons was received. It was a pretty difficult intake. We have got 41 countries participating, so they came from all over the place, but it wasn't easy because of COVID and the restrictions on flights and the limited number of flights, and it was quite a headache because we had flights cancelled and rerouted and all sorts of issues, but at the end of the day we did end up with that number of pigeons.
That's fantastic. Obviously that's a huge amount of work to get 9,000 pigeons from all corners of the globe to little old Zimbabwe. That's no easy task.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's an unusual year because of the lack of flights, and things seem to be getting back to normality now. We've got a better network of flights for this year. We've actually very lucky to see and very happy to see Lufthansa is starting to fly directly into Victoria Falls starting yesterday. So that helps our travellers, people coming here, as well as the bird movement as well.
And are you seeing new, smaller home fanciers getting involved in one-off racing?
I don't know. I mean, that's something I haven't analysed yet. But the fact is that there's still a lot of fanciers. We've got 800 and something odd individuals, some of which have got big teams, others have got small teams.
Yes.
So I don't know if there's any trend yet on that.
It's always something that we've said, is that a one-loft race allows the small fancier to race the big fancier, and there's a relatively even footing.
No, there is. I mean, people would argue that the big guy's got far better chance. We've still got the same. You're still competing against the same number of pigeons. It's not the number of fanciers you're competing against.
Correct. Yes.
And with our team competition that's been introduced, we've had it running for a couple of years already. But now with $200,000 on the team competition, you can only have one team selected from all the birds you have, and that's going to take quite a lot of skill, I think. And
that's actually an advantage to the smaller fancier. The smaller fancier who knows his birds better potentially, and is picking 5 birds from 20 as opposed to 5 birds from 200.
Yeah. Well, the team competition, in fact, is 7 pigeons.
7, okay.
From any number that you enter, but you still have to know your birds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think the smaller fancier tends to be very selective in their breeding. They're only using the click pairs that they have faith in. But they've shown in the past we've had a lot of success from the small time fancier as well.
Yes.
Just as it's not necessarily the big teams that win it.
Yeah. So back on topic, mortalities and quarantine this year, Geoff. What have things been looking like?
Well, the industry norm is normally a bit more than what we have. In the past we've had about 1.5–2%. The first year, I think it was 17% mortalities. This year it was 6%. It was quite variable from different countries. We had the greatest number of mortalities measured against number of birds sent was 13% on one country, and the best was 0.4%.
Wow.
But on average, it was I think it was 6.2 on average against all birds sent.
What do you put that down to, Geoff? Because that's a huge variation, and there's got to be good reasons for that.
Well, I think a lot of preparation needs to go into sending the birds. You know, the biggest issue that the pigeons face is stress, and stress masks or brings out a lot of your subclinical infections that you might have, and predisposes the pigeons to diseases that their body would normally resist. So just the shipping, the fact that they've been shipped and possibly without water for a while and a new environment, and they're young, makes them more susceptible to all sorts of ailments. But the trend has been, we found some countries have greater numbers of mortalities than others, and I think it has a direct bearing on the vaccination protocol that's covered. You know, birds, we recommend the pigeons are vaccinated according to a certain protocol, particularly against paramyxovirus. That was our greatest challenge this year, was PMV. If pigeons are vaccinated correctly, they're less likely to get it. Doesn't mean they won't get it. But a pigeon can be as healthy as anything, and you send it to mix it with other pigeons that have got a disease, they'll pick it up. You know, and I think people are probably more familiar now with viruses, having come through this coronavirus. They understand what viruses are all about, and they understand how they can be spread. You know, you can be healthy, but if you're exposed to a virus, you're going to get it, and it's no difference to pigeons.
I think it's been very interesting for me through this coronavirus period, that the rest of the world is starting to get up to speed with what the pigeon fanciers have known for ages.
Yeah, for sure.
So the pigeon fanciers have been our virologists telling us what's happening with the viruses, what we need to watch out for, because that's one of the skill sets that you need to have as a fancier.
Well, I think it's important that people are follow the veterinary recommendations and the recommendations that we have. I'm not a vet, but I know what the protocol is. And they need to vaccinate early, and they need to vaccinate before they go and mix with other pigeons. And you can't vaccinate against all viruses, but you can vaccinate certainly against paramyxovirus. There are some others that claim that the vaccines work against some of the other viruses. We haven't seen any evidence that there's been trials done on it, but there are claims that certain viruses that pigeons get can be vaccinated against. But the two most important viruses that we're exposed to is paramyxovirus and rotavirus. Now, rotavirus is relatively new. It's been seen in Australia. They've got a fairly effective vaccine now, but the disease itself is, can come there. The pigeons.
I see we got birds coming in, coming in off the toss.
That's great.
Trapping.
Well, I hope they're trapping.
Hope they're trapping. Still learning to trap properly.
So anyway, rotavirus is something which it's not easy to get vaccine for it. It's not a registered product in this country. Okay. We're talking about rotavirus. We recommend that the birds are vaccinated against rotavirus. There is a vaccine available in the United States, and another one, and also available in Europe, of course in Australia, but the Australian birds are not coming yet. I think that it could make a difference, and if you look at analyze the deaths of pigeons from various countries, we had very, very good results out of Europe. I mean, from most European countries are less than 2%, around about 2% mortality. So and a lot of them did vaccinate with rotavirus vaccine. So I think it does have a I think it's something that's worth considering. Yeah. So the mortalities I think have a it's a direct bearing on how well they're prepared before they come.
So Geoff, last question for today, I think. We've had some birds coming in having raced previously in the season before being shipped. How do you feel like that? How do you feel like that affects their performance in a one-loft race like this?
You know, I've always advocated that it's a good idea for the birds to develop their homing instinct at a young age. Now, I really think it's not a bad idea to let the birds out around the loft and give them a few short tosses. It's also an opportunity to select the better birds, because if you can put rings on their legs, you can see which ones come directly home if you single toss them. So I think that's a very good tool. I don't think it's really a good idea to race them a whole season or in a one-loft race and then send them. We've found, having looked at it, that a lot of the birds that are raced previously don't settle. They end up making an attempt to go home. Even if they'll never get there, they fly off for a couple of 100 kilometers, never get back. I think the really clever ones probably do make their way back. But the problem is they take other birds with them as well, ones that are untrained and have no experience. And also, it's, a lot of it's, the birds that do well in a one-loft race, a lot of it's to do with the temperament of the pigeons. Some birds don't settle easily in the environment of one-loft race. It's really impersonal. It's home lofts where they're flying mated or with nest boxes and lots of nooks and crannies. It suits some families of pigeons. Other families of pigeons are quite happy to just sit on a perch in amongst lots of other birds. And I think also resettling pigeons that have raced, sometimes they don't settle. I think the ones that do settle are fine, but some of them don't. And I'm fairly sure, we've lost birds homing them in, which we always do, and we're going to analyse it and just see how many of those birds came in our later shipments. And from what I'm told, a lot of the birds that came in the later shipment actually had raced in other races, in other full seasons. Some of them in other one-loft races. I think that's a little bit of a tall order to ask us to settle those birds and race them successfully. Or that can be done, but it's not something I would recommend.
Right. Okay, fantastic. Well, I think that's all from us now. We will be doing some more videos in this series. We will be looking at the race itself. We'll be looking at the prize money that's available, the different types of races, and why we've chosen the race format that we are doing. We'll be looking at the 2023 race season. So stay tuned. We'll be posting these on social media, and we look forward to hopefully seeing a whole lot of fanciers coming to Zimbabwe this year, because it is really going to be spectacular. We're going to have a fantastic race ahead of us. COVID protocols seem to be dropping off. Right now there's no PCR test required if you are vaccinated. If you're fully vaccinated to get into Zimbabwe. So we're really expecting to see large numbers of fanciers coming to join us. End of July is when our final is going to be. So we'd love to see you all there. Great.
Okay, thanks very much, Richard.